In a quiet village surrounded by hills and dusty roads, a young girl named Maria lived with her parents and younger brother. Her father, Joseph, was a hard-working farmer who spent his days in the sun, planting maize and cassava, while her mother, Grace, sold cooked food by the roadside to help make ends meet. They didn't have much money, but their home was filled with love and laughter. Maria, who was only 12 years old at the time, had big dreams. She often looked up at the sky and imagined herself in a tall office building, wearing fine clothes and speaking at meetings. She didn't know how it would happen, but her heart believed that something big was waiting for her. Maria's parents valued education, even though it was hard to afford. Every morning, she walked for miles to reach the village school. She studied with worn-out books and shared a wooden desk with 3 other children. Her favorite subject was English, and she often helped her brother Musa, who was just 6 years old, with his reading. But when Maria turned 14, everything changed. A long drought came, and her father's crops dried up. Her mother's small food business started to fail because people could barely afford to eat. The family could no longer pay Maria's school fees, and with tears in her eyes, she was forced to stop attending school. Though Maria was heartbroken, she didn't want to sit idle while her family suffered. One morning, she spoke to her parents with courage. "Mother, I want to go to the city and find work. I can help take care of everyone." At first, her parents were afraid. The city was far away, and they knew the world out there could be unkind. But Maria's determination was stronger than their fear. After many days of discussion, Joseph spoke with a relative who lived in the city of Abuja. His name was Uncle Sule, and he agreed to let Maria stay with him while she searched for work. Maria packed her few belongings, hugged her family tightly, and climbed into an old bus that rumbled down the red, dusty road to a future she couldn't yet see. Life in Abuja was nothing like Maria had known. The tall buildings, noisy traffic, and busy markets made her feel small and lost. But she didn't let fear take over. With help from Uncle Sule, she found a job as a housemaid in the home of a wealthy family called Mr. James. Mr. James was a businessman who owned a chain of electronics stores, and his wife, Mrs. Veronica, ran a charity organization. They lived in a large house with shiny floors, air conditioning, and rooms bigger than Maria's entire home back in the village. Maria was 15 now, and though she had never worked as a maid before, she quickly learned how to clean, cook, and care for their 3 children, Taif, Zara, and baby David. Every day, Maria woke up before sunrise. She swept the long corridors, scrubbed the shiny marble floors, and washed dishes until her hands were sore. She carried baby David on her back while folding laundry and still managed to smile when the other children cried or made a mess. Mrs. Veronica was strict but not unkind. She noticed how hardworking Maria was and sometimes asked her to help with office files or sort through donations for her charity. One evening, as Maria quietly folded clothes in the hallway, she heard the Mr. James and his wife discussing business matters over dinner. Words like investments, shares, and contracts filled the air. Maria didn't understand it all, but her ears perked up. It was like hearing a new language, one she was determined to learn. Late at night, when Mr. James's household was asleep, Maria would sit by the window in her tiny room and write in an old notebook. She wrote new words she had heard during the day and tried to guess their meanings. Sometimes, she'd sneak into the family library and borrow old business magazines or children's textbooks. She read slowly, tracing each word with her finger, whispering it to herself. One night, Veronica walked in and caught her reading a book about business management. Maria froze in fear, thinking she'd be scolded. But to her surprise, Veronica smiled and said, "You want to learn, don't you?" Maria nodded shyly. That was the beginning of something new. From that day forward, Veronica took Maria under her wing. She began to teach her small things, how to write a proper email, how to create a list of tasks, and even how to speak confidently. Education is not just in the classroom, she told her. It's in how you think, speak, and carry yourself. Maria soaked up every word like a sponge. During school hours, she helped around the house, and in the evenings, she had her lessons in the kitchen while preparing dinner. She would practice her writing while watching rice boil, and learn customer service as she served guests during charity events. Even Mr. James began to notice her sharp memory and willingness to learn. One Saturday afternoon, Mrs. James took Maria along to a charity business forum. It was a room full of well-dressed people talking about problems and solutions in their communities. Maria wore a borrowed blouse and skirt that Veronica gave her and sat quietly in a corner with a notepad. But her eyes were wide open, watching the way people spoke, how they stood tall and used confident words. She listened carefully to one young woman, Chika, who shared how she had started a soap-making business with just 5,000 naira. Chica's story struck something deep inside Maria. If she can do it, so can I, Maria whispered to herself, holding her notebook tightly like it was a treasure. After the forum, Chica noticed Maria and came to talk to her. She asked, "Did you enjoy the event?" Maria nodded eagerly and replied, "I want to learn how to start a business one day." Chica smiled warmly and handed her a small booklet titled Start Small, Grow Big. "Here," she said, "this is how I began." That night, Maria read every page as if it were gold. The booklet talked about saving money, choosing a product, understanding customers, and believing in yourself. It was simple, but it was a road map. For Maria, it was the first real step toward a dream she had never dared to speak out loud. The days turned into months, and Maria kept learning. She started saving money from the small monthly allowance she received from Mr. James and his wife. Instead of buying clothes or snacks, she bought notebooks, pens, and used textbooks from roadside sellers. She also began helping Veronica with real business tasks, filing reports, making schedules, and even sending professional messages. She learned how to use a computer and create simple spreadsheets. Soon, she was more than just a housemaid. She had become a helper, a student, and slowly, a businesswoman in training. But Maria knew that if she wanted to move forward, she needed to build something of her own. Maria's first idea came from something simple, local soap. She remembered how her mother Grace used to make scented soap back in the village using palm oil, ash, and herbs. One weekend, with her small savings and permission from Veronica, Maria bought ingredients from a local market. In the back corner of the kitchen, while baby David napped, she mixed the ingredients carefully, following instructions from the booklet Chica gave her. The first few batches weren't perfect. Some were too soft, others didn't smell nice. But Maria didn't give up. She tried again and again, and finally, she made something good, something she could be proud of. Veronica was the first to try the soap. She rubbed it on her hands and smiled. "This is lovely," she said. "You made this all by yourself?" Maria nodded, her heart pounding with joy. Soon, the children were using it too, and even Mr. James asked where the fresh lemon scent came from. Encouraged by their praise, Maria packaged 5 small bars and wrapped them in brown paper, tying them with ribbon. She handed them out to guests at the next charity event with a small note, handmade by Maria. People were impressed, not just by the soap, but by the girl who made it. One of the guests at the event was Mrs. Ngozi, a boutique owner who liked supporting local products. She asked Maria, "How much would you sell this for?" Maria hesitated. She hadn't thought about pricing. But Mrs. Ngozi continued, "Come to my shop on Monday. Bring more, and we'll talk business." Maria's heart raced. She told Mrs. Veronica, who clapped with joy. "You see? You've already started," she said. That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She imagined her soaps on shelves, people asking for them, and her name on the wrapper. For the first time, the dream she had as a little girl began to feel real. On Monday, Maria visited Mrs. Ngozi's shop with 10 neatly packaged soaps. The boutique smelled of perfume and fresh linen, and Maria felt out of place at first. But Mrs. Ngozi welcomed her like a friend. "We'll display these on the front shelf," she said. "Let's call it Maria Organics, how does that sound?" Maria was stunned. She had never imagined her name on a product. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she wiped them quickly. "Thank you, Ma," she whispered. From that moment, she was no longer just a maid. She was a young entrepreneur. Over the next few months, Maria balanced her house duties with her soap-making hustle. Each evening, after cleaning and cooking, she would quietly mix ingredients, test new scents like lavender and shea, and label her growing collection. Mr. James's children cheered her on, calling her Madam Soap. Even the drivers and security guards at the estate bought from her. She made enough money to open a small bank account, her first ever. Holding that bank card in her hands felt like holding a key. A key to freedom, to future plans, and to the person she knew she could become. But success wasn't without obstacles. Maria began to feel tired more often. Her hands were rough from chemicals, and balancing work with her growing business took a toll on her body. There were days when she cried alone in her room, wondering if she was trying too hard. "Maybe I'm just a housemaid pretending to be something I'm not," she whispered one night. But then she looked at the soaps lined up on her shelf, remembered her family back in the village, and wiped her tears. "I didn't come this far to stop now," she said aloud, standing up with new resolve. Around this time, Maria received a surprise call from Chica, the woman from the business forum. She had heard from Mrs. Veronica that Maria's business was growing. "Would you like to attend a youth entrepreneurship boot camp?" Chica asked. "We're selecting a few girls with small businesses. It's fully sponsored, Maria gasped. She had never even been on a school trip, let alone a boot camp. With permission from Mr. James and his wife Veronica, she packed her things and traveled to Lagos for the program. It was 1 week long and filled with classes, mentorship, and networking. For the first time, Maria felt like she truly belonged among future CEOs. The boot camp changed everything. Maria learned how to register a business, create a brand, use social media for marketing, and speak confidently about her product. On the final day, she stood on stage and shared her journey from village girl to housemaid to soap entrepreneur. The crowd clapped, some wiping tears. Maria received a certificate, a gift box of business tools, and, most importantly, a small grant of 100,000 naira to grow her business. She cried, not from sadness, but from disbelief. "This is God," she said quietly. "This is just the beginning." Returning to Abuja, Maria wasted no time. She used the grant to buy better soap molds, print labels with her new brand Maria Organics, and set up a small website with help from Chika's team. She also started training one of Mr. James' older cousins, Halima, to help her with production. Maria still worked as a housemaid during the day, but her evenings and weekends were for business. Mrs. Veronica proudly introduced her to friends as our in-house entrepreneur. Her small bedroom became a mini factory. The dream was growing, one bar at a time. 2 years later, Maria stood in front of her very own shop. It was small but clean, painted with bright colors and her name on the signboard, Maria Organics, pure, local, loved. Her parents came from the village to attend the opening. Joseph, her father, wore his best native wear, and her mother Grace cried tears of joy as she hugged her daughter tightly. "We are proud of you, my child," she said. Even little Musa, now a teenager, stared at the shelves of soap and said, "You did it, sister." Maria looked around at her shop, her family, and her journey, and whispered, "This is not the end. This is only the beginning." Word about Maria Organics spread fast. People loved that the products were natural, made by hand, and created by a girl with such a touching story. Local radio stations started calling her the girl who rose from the mop to the market. One day, a journalist from a popular TV show asked for an interview. Maria was nervous, but she agreed. Wearing a simple but clean dress, she sat in front of bright lights and cameras. When asked what kept her going through the hard times, she looked straight at the camera and said, "I remembered my mother's hands. Even when they were tired, they never stopped working. That's my strength." After the interview aired, Maria's story touched hearts across Nigeria. Orders poured in from Lagos, Port Harcourt, and even Ghana. She had to hire 2 more assistants, Blessing and Lillian, young women who, like her, needed a second chance. She trained them not only in soap making but also in business skills and customer service. "You're not just workers," she told them. "You're builders of your own future." Her shop became more than a store. It was a small training center, a place of hope. People came not just to buy soap, but to learn, to ask questions, and to be inspired. Despite the fame and growing money, Maria remained humble. She still swept her shop every morning and answered customer calls herself. On weekends, she visited poor neighborhoods and gave out free soaps to families who couldn't afford them. At one point, she launched the Clean Hands, Healthy Lives campaign, giving free soap to schools and teaching children how to wash properly. One little girl hugged her and said, "I want to be like you one day." Maria knelt down, touched her cheek, and replied, "You can be even greater." One day, Maria received a letter with a gold seal. It was an invitation to speak at a National Youth Business Summit in Abuja, hosted by the Ministry of Youth Development. She was to speak alongside top CEOs and tech innovators. "Me? Among them?" she asked, wide-eyed. "You deserve it," said Mrs. Veronica, who still followed Maria's progress like a proud mother. At the summit, Maria stood on stage in a beautiful dress sewn by local tailors. As she spoke, her voice didn't shake. She talked about the power of small beginnings, about staying honest, and about never looking down on your roots. The crowd gave her a standing ovation. After the event, many people came to take photos with Maria. A few investors approached her with interest in expanding her brand into supermarkets and malls. One offered her a large contract, but Maria paused. She remembered something her father Joseph once said, "If you run too fast after riches, you may lose your shoes." So she asked for time to think. That night, she sat on her balcony with a cup of tea, looking up at the same stars she once watched from her village home. "God," she whispered, "help me grow without losing who I am." Eventually, Maria agreed to expand, but on her terms. She registered her business as a limited company and opened a second shop near the city center. She also launched a website with online ordering, making her products accessible nationwide. As her business grew, so did her voice. She was invited to speak on panels about women's empowerment and youth entrepreneurship. She shared her journey, always reminding others that dignity can grow from the most unexpected places, even from washing floors. One morning, she received a call from her village's headmaster, Mr. Danjuma. "Maria," he said, "our school needs help. The roof is leaking, and we have no chairs." Maria didn't think twice. She organized a fundraiser and donated part of her savings. She even visited the school with books, soap, and uniforms for the children. The same classroom she had once left in tears was now filled with her laughter. The teachers welcomed her like a hero. "You've made us proud," Mr. Danjuma said, as the children sang songs in her honor. When Maria turned 25, she was named one of the top 10 young entrepreneurs in Africa by a major magazine. Her photo was on the cover, head held high, holding a bar of her first soap. At the launch event, she brought along her mother Grace and her father Joseph, now older but glowing with pride. "You carried us all the way here," Grace whispered, holding her hand. Maria gave a short speech and said, "This is for every girl who was told she's just a housemaid. You are never just anything. You are everything." Though her days were busy, Maria always found time for peace. She loved to walk through gardens or sit at the mosque in silence, thinking, praying. She often visited Uncle Sule, who had given her a place to stay when she first arrived in Abuja. "You planted the seed," she told him. "I just watered it." She also never stopped calling Chika, who had now opened her own training school for young businesswomen. "We're building a network of hope," Chiki said. "And you are one of our brightest lights." One evening, standing on the balcony of her third store, Maria looked out over the city. Lights twinkled like stars, and traffic moved slowly below. She thought of her journey, from a barefoot girl in the village to a housemaid, from soap maker to CEO. Every hardship, every tear, every late-night notebook filled with scribbles had brought her here. And she knew, deep in her heart, that her story was not just hers, it belonged to every child who dared to dream. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we rise again." Years passed, and Maria became a mentor to thousands. She launched the Maria Foundation for Girls, offering scholarships and training programs for housemaids, dropouts, and orphaned girls. Every year, she hosted a special event called Dream Beyond the Broom, where young women shared their stories. Some cried on stage, others danced or recited poetry. Maria sat in the front row, clapping, smiling, and sometimes wiping tears. "Your voice matters," she often told them. "Don't let the world silence it." These events became safe spaces, planting seeds of courage in girls who had once been invisible. Though she had built a brand, a movement, and a name known across West Africa, Maria still visited Mr. James and his family every few months. Baby David was now in secondary school, taller than her, but still called her Auntie Soap. Mrs. Veronica cried the first time she saw Maria's billboard in the city. "I always knew you were meant for more," she said. "You just needed someone to believe in you." Maria hugged her tightly and whispered, "Thank you for being that someone." Their bond had grown into something more than employer and housemaid, it was family. But not all moments were joyful. One rainy afternoon, Maria received news that her mother Grace had fallen sick. She rushed to the village, only to find her mother weak and lying in bed. "My child," Mama said with a soft voice, "you have carried us to a place I never dreamed of." Maria sat by her side for days, feeding her, praying, and brushing her hair like she used to do for her as a girl. When Mama eventually passed peacefully in her sleep, Maria buried her beneath the tall mango tree where they used to sit. The loss was deep, but her love became a quiet fire that burned stronger than ever. After the burial, Maria built a small community center in her mother's name, the Grace Women's Hall, where women could learn skills like sewing, cooking, and soap making. "Let this be a place where no woman feels helpless," she said at the opening. Women came from nearby villages, some walking for hours. They learned, laughed, and formed sisterhoods. Maria often visited to teach or just to listen. She wanted every woman to leave the center with something her mother had once given her, dignity. Maria also began writing her first book, titled More Than a Maid. It was part memoir, part guide, filled with real-life lessons, funny moments, and encouragement. In the book, she wrote, "Your background doesn't have to hold you back. Sometimes it's the very thing that launches you forward." The book became a bestseller, translated into French, Swahili, and Hausa. School libraries stocked it, and girls wrote her letters thanking her for showing them what was possible. One day, Maria received an invitation she never imagined, a chance to speak at the United Nations in New York. She was to represent African women in business and education. Flying on a plane for the first time, she wore a green and gold anchor dress made by a local tailor. On the United Nations stage, she spoke with grace and fire. "I am a village girl who became a CEO, not by luck, but by purpose," she said. "The world must invest in its girls, because we are the ones who rise from nothing and build nations." After her speech, world leaders and business giants approached her with respect. But Maria never let pride swallow her humility. Back home, she still washed her own clothes, prayed 5 times a day, and called her younger brother Musa every weekend. He had now finished university and joined her business as a logistics manager. "You're the boss now," she teased. "No," he replied, "you're the heart of this whole thing." Together, they made Maria Organics a household name across Africa. As she turned 30, Maria held a private dinner with those who helped her along the way: Uncle Sule, Chica, Mrs. Veronica, and a few of her earliest staff. She stood and gave a toast. "You believed in a girl who had nothing. Today, I have more than wealth. I have purpose, I have peace, and I have people." The room was silent for a moment, then filled with clapping and tears. Maria didn't need to build towers or fly in private jets to feel rich. She was already living a life of meaning. One evening, Maria visited her old room in Mr. James's house. It was now used for storage, but her old notebook still sat on the shelf. She flipped through the pages, scribbled dreams, price calculations, and the quote her mother Grace once told her: "Even a seed in the dust can become a tree." She smiled, closed the book gently, and whispered, "We grew, Mama. We really grew." That night, she wrote a new dream on a fresh page: "One day, I'll build a university for girls." Because for Maria, the journey never truly ended. Maria's life had started in silence, quiet tears, quiet prayers, quiet dreams. But now, her name echoed in classrooms, boardrooms, and marketplaces. She had gone from sweeping floors to signing checks, from being unseen to being unforgettable. And as the sun set over the city she once feared, she stood at the top of her office building, arms folded, wind in her scarf. The same girl who once whispered dreams in the dark was now a woman lighting paths for millions. And in her heart, one truth rang louder than ever: I was never just a housemaid. I was always a queen in the making. Thank you for watching the story of Maria, a girl who rose from sweeping floors to signing deals. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of your own journey, or gave you hope for the future, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel. Because here, we tell stories that inspire, stories that heal, and stories that prove that no beginning is too small. See you in the next one.